Hi everyone, I'm Gabi. I'm Jesse Alcaraz. I teach people accounting, business, and financial literacy concepts. And for this evening, we will continue our discussion on journal entries. So basically, ang mangyayari, Tagalog na po Bisaya. Mag-Tagalog na lang tanong. So ang mangyayari for tonight is that we will have some exercise, no? We will be journalizing around, I think these are 11 transactions, so that meron tayong familiarity and hopefully mastery sa iba't ibang klase ng transactions, so that we will be able to identify anong mga accounts ang gagamitin natin for this specific transaction. So without further ado, let us go over to this discussion. Okay, so for this discussion, we will be having our chart of accounts here so that di na tayo mahirapan in identifying the accounts that needs to be debited or credited. So again, we have to familiarize ourselves with the different accounts. Accounts coming from the assets, liabilities, equity, revenue, and then expenses, and specific accounts under them. So cash, well, pera. Accounts receivable, these are our collectibles. If meron umutang sa atin, then this is the account na madadagdagan. It represents the money na kukolektahin natin from our customers. We have office supplies, just like bond paper, mga ballpen, and if you are running a salon, then may shampoo, mga sabon, mga hair dye, or if you have a cafe, then this includes your syrup, mga coffee beans, and the likes. Prepaid rent, so these are advance payment for rent. This is an asset. So if ever na magbabayad tayo for a rent na advance or something na deposit, then we can just record it as prepaid rent. That is still an asset and not an expense since di pa natin siya nagamit. Then we have equipment. Well, self-explanatory. We'll just skip this one now because we will be discussing this one pagdating sa adjusting entries. Then we have liabilities, accounts payable. It is the opposite of the accounts receivable wherein pag tayo naman yung may binili and di natin siya binayaran, then that is accounts payable. That is utang on our end. The same goes for salaries payable. Our employees have already rendered their service pero hindi pa natin nabayaran, therefore, utang yan on our end. And of course, we have unearned service revenue. When we talk of unearned, this is a cash advance from our customers. Okay? So, nagbigay ng pera si customer in advance for service that will be rendered in the future or for a service. This is service, no? So, we will not be talking about goods. So that is an utang and not an income. Equity, we have capital. If there is an additional money or resources coming from investors or the owner, and the drawings, if resources from the business is taken from the business tapos binibigay sa mga owners. Service revenue when we render service. Then of course, rental expense. If nagamit na natin yung rent for the month, then that's the time that we record rent expense. Salaries expense, depreciation, we'll just skip this one. We will be discussing this one as well pagdating sa journal entries. And then supplies expense and utilities expense. So these are all expense accounts. Okay, so medyo mahaba na yung discussion natin for the accounts. So, I siguro will just cover up to 5 transactions for this video and continue for the rest. So, you are the accountant for ABC Services, a small accounting firm, consulting firm rather. So, below are the transactions for the month of September. So, let us start with September 1. The owner invests $15,000 in cash to start the business. So take note, the owner invested. Okay, that is the important one. And yung in-invest niya is cash. Take note that we are recording in behalf of the business, meaning yung 15,000 na cash was given to the business. Okay, was given to the business from the owner. So there's a transfer from the owner to the business of the cash. So be reminded that we are recording in behalf of the business. Therefore, for the accounts that were affected, specifically cash, nadagdagan po yung cash natin by 15,000. So, and since the cash came from the owner, that represents equity. So the specific accounts that we'll be using for September 1 would be capital and cash. Cash, nadagdagan. Owner's capital, nadagdagan din. Take note, cash is an asset, and since nadagdagan siya, it demands a debit. Kindly refer sa kodigo natin from our last video or from the video, hindi yung video, picture. May picture tayo no, na may discussion. And since nadagdagan yung owner's capital, this is an equity account, it demands a credit. So, entry would be cash, 15,000 pesos. Then credit, owner's capital, 15,000 pesos. To record owner investment. Okay, so we can have that as our journal entry. Next, September 2, paid $1,200 for rent for the month of September. Take note that kaka-start pa lang natin ng business, and at the same time, kaka-start pa lang din ng month of September. Therefore, yung binabayaran natin na 1,200, hindi pa ito nagamit. Therefore, it is still considered an asset. And because of the word paid, this tells us that there is an outflow of cash for this transaction. Therefore, the accounts that are affected are cash because meron tayong binayaran, and the 1,200 is for the prepaid rent. Nabawasan yung cash natin and nadagdagan yung prepaid rent natin. Prepaid rent is an asset, and since nadagdagan siya, it demands a debit. And since yung cash natin nabawasan, that is an asset, it demands a credit. Therefore, the entry is prepaid rent tsaka cash. Debit, prepaid rent, then credit, cash, amounting to 1,200 to record payment for rent. Okay. Next, September 5, purchase of office supplies on account for $500. So, bumili tayo ng office supplies. And since bumili tayo, our office supplies increased. Okay, there is an increase in the office supplies. And since, we purchased it on account. Because of the word on account, it means this is utang. Okay? Bumili tayo and then hindi natin nabayaran. So, our office supplies increased because bumili tayo, and at the same time, our utang also increased kasi nga, umutang tayo. Okay? Office supplies is an asset, and once increased, it demands a debit. On the other hand, debt naman, utang, also increased, and since this is a liability, it demands a credit. So, the account to be used for the debt would be accounts payable, and then office supplies. So, debit, office supplies, and then credit, accounts payable. $500 to record purchase on account. Okay? Next. So, we have September 7. Provided service to a client and earned 2,500. Cash received immediately. Okay? So, the obvious account that has been mentioned here is that we receive cash. So, yung cash natin is nadagdagan. And why did it increase? It was increased because we rendered services. So this is what you call is service revenue. Our service revenue increased, and at the same time, our cash also increased. Cash is an asset, and once increased, it demands a debit. And then on the other hand, service revenue is a revenue account, and since nadagdagan siya, it demands a credit. Therefore, the entry to record this one is cash 2,500 and then service revenue. Let's double check our chart of accounts if it is service revenue. Yes. Kasi minsan service income. So you have to double check your chart of accounts to record service rendered. Service rendered for cash. Actually, for the explanation, it can be anything naman, no? For so long as naiintindihan natin yung explanation natin bakit meron tayong transaction na ganyan or debit and credit na ganun. And then lastly, for tonight's discussion, September 10, provided services on account on another client. So again, nandyan na naman, account. This means utang. However, utang ito, debt of our customers. So kung kanina, utang siya, pero utang natin, tayo yung magbabayad. This time around, this is an utang by our customer. Therefore, this is a collectible. Okay? Yung customer natin ang may utang and we will be collecting it in the future. So, on the account that will be used for that is what we call accounts receivable. So, accounts receivable is also an asset and then nadagdagan yung collectible natin. Therefore, it demands a debit. And why do we have an asset like that? It's because of the service that we have rendered. Again, service rendered or service revenue is a revenue account. And since nadagdagan siya because we provided service for this transaction, it will be credited. So, accounts receivable, debit, accounts receivable. I'll just shortcut ko na lang yan kasi medyo mahaba. And then, service revenue. 3,000 pesos to record service rendered on account. Okay, so let's just end there and we will have another discussion for the remaining transactions. So there you have it. Usually these are the exercises that I used in our classroom discussion. So I hope that you were able to find it valuable. Marami kayong natutunan. And if there are questions, clarifications, feel free to comment it down sa baba. And of course, if you are interested in having a one-on-one session with me, you can just message my Facebook page or my WhatsApp, book a schedule, and then discuss tayo for business concerns, accounting concerns, and also insurance concerns. That's all, and maayong gabi sa tanan.